Caullin Lacy proved on Saturday that he is the Louisville Cardinals' Swiss Army knife.
You are Locked On Louisville, your daily podcast on the Louisville Cardinals. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Card Nation, what's going on, everyone? Welcome into this Tuesday edition of the Locked On Louisville podcast. I'm your host, Dalton Pence. This is my 6th year covering U of L, 4th year hosting this show, and I want to take the time to thank you all for making us your first listen of the day. Just a reminder, Locked On Louisville free and available on all streaming services 5 days a week. Your team every day. We're continuing to dissect the season opener. Louisville victorious over EKU 51-17. Caullin Lacy proved on Saturday that he is the Swiss Army knife for the Louisville Cardinals, both on offense and special teams. We're going to discuss that. We will also take a look at the running backs' workload. Only 8 total carries combined between Isaac Brown and Duke Watson. Some have kind of questioned that, but truthfully, I think it's okay. And both of the running backs did their respective jobs and more from that group. And then we'll take a look at what happened around the ACC in week one. Overall, very, very solid week for the conference in week one. But first, today's episode of the show is brought to you by FanDuel. Football season is here. Visit the FanDuel app and start planning your futures bets now. All right, so yesterday we had our initial recap, right, of the week one victory over Eastern Kentucky. Today I wanted to take things a little bit further. I wanted to highlight some incredible individual performances, and the first one has to be that of Caullin Lacy's. Caullin Lacy, last year, of course, dealt with that collarbone injury at probably the midway point of fall camp. Missed the first portion of the season, came back for the game against Notre Dame, and he was clearly not 100% healthy. He decides to bet on himself. He redshirts, he comes back to Louisville, and now fully healthy, of course, is factoring into a really, really good 1-2 punch at wide receiver between him and Chris Bell. Now, I was pretty vocal, not only last week, but leading up to the season, that I guess it's PTSD, but I'm not a huge fan of your top skill position guys on offense or your top defensive backs being used as kick or punt returners. Just because in years past, we've seen top stars get hurt. Jair Alexander in the season opener in 2017. Remember that? Quincy Riley early in the season last year. And some will say, well, it wasn't the special teams that got Quincy hurt. Well, regardless, playing a ton of snaps. So I guess you can chalk it up to me just having that PTSD of watching Louisville lose some of the stars to special teams. Well, what happened on Saturday, Caullin Lacy takes a punt back for a touchdown. And it was one of those, like, the guy's just determined not to go down. He shedded a couple of tackles, bounced off contact, and just outran all 11 players on the other side of the football. He had 204 yards of, I guess you would call it total offense. I have to factor in special teams yardage as well. He accounted for 204 yards. It would have been 210, but he had -6 rushing yards. So he was second on the team in receiving yards. He caught 4 passes for 62 yards. He had 1 kick return for 23 yards and 4 punt returns for 125. And of course, 93 of those yards come on the 1 punt return in the first quarter that put the Cardinals up 14-0. So I'm watching that game, and look, I never disagreed with why a guy like Caullin Lacy should be on special teams. I just voiced how nervous that I get, and even watching what he did on Saturday doesn't take away from the fact that I still am nervous moving forward, because you've got guys going full steam right at you. And Caullin Lacy's not the largest guy. I mean, he's pretty strong for his size, right? I'm not saying that he is weak or anything like that. Please don't interpret it that way. But even like the largest player, you've got 11 guys running full steam right ahead at you, trying to take you down. And it's hard to, I'm sorry, it's not hard to see why injuries happen on special teams. So sorry, I was sitting there trying to collect my thoughts. But I see both sides. Like, now, just because I get nervous watching a Louisville star on special teams doesn't mean that I disagree about, the merit of the argument, right? I think that Caullin Lacy is your most dynamic playmaker in terms of special teams, just because he can use that shiftiness, that agility, that yards after catch ability is also kind of trickling over into special teams to the point to where it's really hard to bring him down. And I thought that Bobby Golden might end up as one of the top return guys, and he did get some work in the second half, but it was pretty clear that Caullin Lacy is the guy. And let's say that he stays the guy, and I would imagine that he does. Of course, this was all against Eastern Kentucky, so understanding context and putting it into the equation, you understand that Eastern Kentucky is very likely going to be the worst team that you play all season. So is he going to be able to have that level of an impact as the season goes on, as the teams that you're playing get tougher? And I think that the answer is yes, because he showed throughout his college career that when he's healthy, he can go up against the best of them. Really succeeded against Power 4 competition when he was with South Alabama. So you've got that body of work that you can reference and say, hey, look, I'm going to point back to what he did back in 2023, because it's pretty clear that when he's healthy, he's an elite level yak monster. So from a special teams standpoint, and we know how important special teams can be, because you also saw that the Cardinals had a good amount of special teams penalty yardage, something that has to correct itself, because, you're moving yourself back in terms of field position. There was one where Eastern Kentucky got the ball close to the 50-yard line on one drive because of special teams. I think it was a face mask, if I'm not mistaken. But in the same way that it can hurt you, it can also directly benefit you. It can be a huge momentum shift. We saw special teams last year. Caullin Lacy had the kick return touchdown against Miami. Tayon Holloway blocked the field goal against Georgia Tech and ran it back for a touchdown. It can be a part of the game that can be a true asset for you. So if you have that dangerous of a return man, the sky is the limit. But not only that, but he's a Swiss Army knife on offense, because there's a lot of stuff that he can do. Will we see more wrinkles to the game plan trying to get him the ball in different ways? I would almost guarantee that. Jeff Brom's not showing his full hand week one against a team that he's supposed to beat by 38.5 points according to the spread. You're not going to see a full game plan against James Madison. You're not going to see a full game plan against Bowling Green. It's by design, right? You never tip your hand too early. You are still unveiling parts of your offensive identity and play calling and game plan with each and every week. So trying to keep that competitive advantage. So I think that the ways that Caullin Lacy got the ball in the first game, of course, there were a couple out routes, short throws, and allowing him to make things happen with his feet, with the ball in his hands. He had a kind of a downfield catch, I believe it was like a 32-yarder in the first quarter, where Lacy had to kind of contort his body in midair, if I'm remembering correctly. But you saw how he was used as a receiver week one. Didn't play really in the second half. 13 different guys caught a pass on Saturday for the Louisville Cardinals. So 4 for 62. It's pretty solid. Averaged 15.5 yards per reception. He did what he needed to do. It was a good first game. And, of course, you're easing him back into that playing speed, because he missed the back half of last year and only played, here and there throughout the duration of the 2024 season. So Caullin Lacy, you're going to see the more unique ways that they're going to get him the ball as the weeks go on. Of course, his special teams ability, the yards after catch potential. He's a true game changer as that Swiss Army knife level player. And if he stays healthy, I mean, gosh, we could see an incredible season from number 5 in Louisville's offense. But we're going to analyze what happened with the running backs room. We'll look at that workload. Isaac Brown and Duke Watson, only 8 total carries. Not fully unexpected, not completely expected either. It was a little bit of a surprise, but when you kind of look back on it, I don't think it's that large of a surprise. And I think that Jeff Brom and company, they did it right. They divvied up the workload in the running backs room the way that they needed to. And I'll explain why that's the case when we come back on this Tuesday edition of the Locked On Louisville podcast. First, I want to take the time to tell you about our friends over at Supply House. When the opening whistle blows on a new repair, get your crew moving forward with Supply House. Order today and see parts on your doorstep tomorrow. Over 280,000 plumbing, HVAC, and electrical items from the most trusted brands in the business. Their real-time inventory and honest lead times keep you from punting projects, while their industry-leading customer service always has your blind side covered. For me, I've told this story a couple times. I'll tell it again. Back in early August, I was one of those do-it-yourself home improvement guys trying to build a shelf out in my garage, and I realized I didn't have everything that I needed. Supply House, it saved me. It had my back. It was able to deliver stuff next day to my house. That's a complete game changer. So join the free Trademaster program today and score serious perks like priority shipping, lower prices, and a dedicated support line. Visit supplyhouse.com to sign up for free and use the promo code SHCollege5 for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. Real people, real service. Also, before we get into the next segment, I want to take the time to tell you about our friends over at Rougier. Guys, you've probably heard of Viagra or Cialis. Maybe you've even tried them, but if you're looking for something beyond the pill, it's time to meet Rougier Ready. Rougier Ready is a next-gen prescription treatment designed to amplify arousal in the brain and boost blood flow. Unlike the usual pills that can take hours, Rougier's 3-in-1 formula dissolves onto your tongue and kicks in fast. On average, in 15 minutes, effects can last up to 36 hours, so you can stay confident and in control when the moment is right. If traditional options haven't worked, Rougier might be the answer. Over 150,000 men have already made the switch. Head to Rougiet.com/LockedOnCollege and use the code LockedOnCollege to get 15% off today. That's RUGIET.com/LockedOnCollege and use the code LockedOnCollege for 15% off. Individual results may vary with prescription treatment. Compounded drugs are permitted to be prescribed under federal law, but are not FDA approved and do not undergo FDA safety, effectiveness, or manufacturing review. Please visit the Rougier website for full safety information. We have an important request, Card Nation. Locked On wants to hear from you. We put together a survey to learn more about our listeners and make your favorite podcast even better. This is your chance to tell us what you like, what you don't, and then answer questions about our advertising. Go to LockedOnPodcasts.com/survey to get started. Everyone who completes a survey will be entered into chance to win one of 10 $100 Amazon gift cards. Again, that's LockedOnPodcasts.com/survey. You can also find the link in the show notes. Thank you so much for helping us out. Let's continue to analyze the offensive performance for the Louisville Cardinals in the season opening 51-17 victory over the Eastern Kentucky Colonels. I've seen some discussion on social media about how the coaching staff managed the workload for the running backs. And the Cardinals had technically it's considered 28 carries. Of course, sack yardage and things they are compiled into these stats. But overall, the rushing numbers looked like 28 carries, 232 yards, 8.3 yards per carry, and 4 touchdowns. Isaac Brown had 2 of those. Kewan Brown had 1, and Miller Moss had the 8-yard scramble for the 4th touchdown. But I've seen some people kind of complain a little bit about the workload for the 2 stars, Isaac Brown and Duke Watson. They combined for 8 total carries. Isaac Brown 6 for 126 and 2 touchdowns. Duke Watson only 2 carries for 2 yards. I think Isaac Brown proved what he needed to prove. Like, you want to keep guys fresh. You want to give other guys some reps just in case one of the top end guys goes down with injury. Knock on wood. You hope that doesn't happen, but football is a 100% violent sport, so it does happen from time to time. But last year, Isaac and Duke combined for 11 total carries in the blowout win against Austin Peay. So 8 total carries. I thought maybe Duke Watson could have had another carry or two, but Isaac Brown, 6 carries, 126 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Like, he proved exactly what he needed to. Like, hey, I didn't get much of a workload because of our opponent wanting to keep, everyone fresh and save your running backs for the games that are going to be close or supposed to be close. I mean, when you carry the ball 6 times and you average 21 yards per carry and you score 2 touchdowns, you have a breakaway 68-yard touchdown where you absorbed some initial contact and then just turned on the burners and beat everyone down the field. Like, you showed what you needed to. Isaac Brown had a really good performance. And even if you're playing an inferior team, it's like, okay, hey, I only got 6 carries, but I still rushed for $126 and 2 touchdowns. Duke Watson, 2 carries for 2 yards is not ideal. He made up for it with a 30-yard touchdown catch from Miller Moss. It's actually a pretty good throw in the end zone in the second quarter. So he made up for it. I do wish he would have got a couple more carries, but I am all for keeping Watson and Brown, keeping them fresh, not having to put them in harm's way because, you're taking so many hits as a running back, not giving them too many carries when you've got the game taken care of. Because what happens, playing the devil's advocate, what happens if one of those guys gets hurt in a game where you're already up 35 points, right? So I'm okay with the way the workload was distributed for those 2 guys. Kewan Brown, 6 carries for 25 yards and a touchdown, had a touchdown called back due to a hold. But he also ended up catching 2 passes for 12 yards. Those receiving numbers would have looked a lot better. He had 2 total touchdowns, but liked what I saw from him. Really glad that Louisville was able to bring him back and have him take his name out of the transfer portal. Sean Boykins, 5 carries for 40 yards in that second half. You also saw Braxton Jennings, 6 carries for 27 yards, true freshman walk-on from Ashland, Kentucky. I thought it was interesting to see him. We didn't really get to see John Maurice Wilder in this game. He did not log a single carry. So kind of questioning, was he hurt? Just not ready? Like, what was the reasoning behind that? I didn't believe that he was hurt. Maybe staff just said, you know what? Maybe he just needs a redshirt year. But thought it was interesting that we didn't see him. I listened to Brahms' press conference on Monday, didn't really hear anything out of the blue, and hadn't read anything or heard anything about him being hurt and his availability in question. So I'm not really sure. Maybe he does have an injury, but if he does, forgive me for being ignorant in this situation. But liked to see Sean Boykins get some work. The wide receiver converted over to running back, averaged 8 yards per carry. It's pretty clear that Louisville was trying to keep everyone fresh and rotating guys in. Like, no player saw more than 6 carries. So I liked it. I liked what I saw from the Louisville running back committee. Again, not getting too high, not getting too low from a game where you're supposed to win by almost 40 points. Week 1, where, it's going to take some time for guys to get going, right? And I think that the offensive line is still trying to figure some things out. Trevonte Sylvester didn't play due to injury. I think Jeff Brum said that he probably doesn't expect him to play against James Madison either, which is not ideal, but hopefully it's not something that's going to affect him long term. But yeah, it also kind of comes down to the offensive line, and I think especially on Duke Watson's 2 carries, there just wasn't much room for him to run. He was kind of the victim of no holes or gaps to run through. So overall, not worried about Brown or Watson's workload. I was expecting about 11 to 12 carries. 8 total carries is pretty close to that. So don't use them any more than you have to, because it's a big picture thing, right? Like Jeff Brom's trying to go for a college football playoff. I think that if you're worried about like an Isaac Brown Heisman situation, even though the current format is kind of designed for running backs not to win the Heisman, if you win a ton of games and he is a good player, then you're going to have a shot if that's what you're worried about. But I'm more worried about winning games. So overall, thought it was a good day at the office for the Cardinals rushing attack. But let's take a look at week 1 around the ACC. Some things surprised me. Clemson, Miami, Florida State. Others were expected. And there were some where you kind of just wince a little bit and say, it might not be too great moving forward. We'll discuss when we come back on this Tuesday edition of the Locked On Louisville podcast. Today's episode of the show is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL season, a couple days away. FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer right now. New customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love using FanDuel because it fits however I like to bet. I like to switch it up sometimes. Sometimes it's just player props. Sometimes it's a same-game parlay. Sometimes it's a money line parlay, or even if I'm feeling a little bit on edge, I will I'll go into the live betting, but not too often. But it's the versatility that I love the most about FanDuel, and it's exactly why I'm excited for NFL action to start on Thursday. So if you're ready to play, download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. Also want to take the time while I have you to tell you about our friends over at Game Time College Football. Of course, it is back. I couldn't be more excited. The tailgates, rivalries, energy in the stands, you name it. There's nothing like it. But let's be real. Getting tickets sometimes can feel like more of a battle than the game itself, with the endless queues, hidden fees, prices jumping out of checkout, you name it. That's why I use Game Time, the app that gives the advantage back to the fans. It's the easiest way to score the last-minute tickets at the best prices with no surprise fees. I pulled up Game Time before that Eastern Kentucky game. In just a couple of taps, I saw all of the amazing deals, the prices that were lower than any other service. I got to see the views from the seats that I was looking at, and there were no surprise fees at checkout. So take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Again, terms apply. That's promo code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time today. Final segment of the show. Don't forget, when we come back tomorrow, we are going to potentially, now this is keyword potentially here, have a crossover episode with the Locked On Sunbelt host, David Schultz. If not, we will have a weekly mailbag. So there will be a Wednesday episode, of course, and just be on the lookout for that. But overall, with this being recorded on Monday afternoon, the final ACC game of the week has not been played yet. North Carolina versus TCU. Bill Belichick is in college football now, but great week for the conference. 12-4 with some key marquee victories. We're going to run through who handled business already, so we don't really have to talk much about this. Louisville handled Eastern Kentucky, of course. Duke 45-17 over Elon. SMU 42-13 over East Texas A&M. Pittsburgh 61-9 against Duquesne. Boston College victorious 66-10 over Fordham. Virginia 48-7 over the Coastal Carolina Chanticleers. And that is pretty much sort of the handle business category. California did get a road victory at Oregon State 34-15, which was pretty solid. So those are the teams that handle business. Like, not a ton of marquee matchups, but most of the teams handle business. But there were some that just completely disappointed. They didn't play this week, but the week before, Stanford lost at Hawaii 23-20. They almost had that game won. Late turnover kind of hurt the Cardinal there. So Stanford losing hurts. NC State didn't impress me, 24-17 over East Carolina. So it was one of those where wasn't really all that impressed. Same thing with Wake Forest, 10-9 victory over Kennesaw State. Now I know that NC State kind of middle of the pack, but I was hoping to see more from Dave Doran's team. Wake Forest projected one of the worst teams in the conference. They didn't really look all that great. Syracuse and Virginia Tech both lost to SEC schools. Syracuse to Tennessee. That one was one I was very disappointed in. They just completely looked outmatched, 45-26. Virginia Tech kind of kept it close in that first half against South Carolina. It was a 24-11 game. The VT offense just was not good at all. But the three that surprised me for better or for worse, well, actually four, we'll say. Georgia Tech with the close win over Colorado. I thought Georgia Tech should have won that game anyway. They won 27-20. Wasn't a great day passing the ball for Haynes King, but he showed that toughness with the ability to run the football. 27-20 victory for Georgia Tech. The three that I was looking at the most, Clemson. Now, granted, look, let's be honest. You can't have too significant and concrete of a takeaway in week one because teams do get better. It's a one-game sample size. But Clemson, boy, did they not look good. I have been a huge Cade Klubnik advocate all offseason, and, man, he just did not look good. Maybe it's because of LSU's defense and the talent on that defense, but Clemson only put up 10 points. They didn't score in the second half, a couple of turnovers. The Clemson defense looked pretty solid in the first half, and then after that, it just was one of those man, I know Antonio Williams got hurt, but I'm watching Clemson very closely the first couple weeks of the season, especially against Georgia Tech on September 13th at Georgia Tech. That's going to be one where I'm okay, kind of serving as that that key measurable is okay, how's this game going to unfold? What's going to happen? If Clemson loses this game, I'm not going to say total Florida State 2024, but maybe they're not the wagon that people thought they were. Florida State, credit to them. Thomas Castellanos talked a ton of smack all offseason, and he walked Alabama down. A ton of respect, 31-17 over Bama. Now, I don't think that Bama has the right quarterback for the job, but Florida State completely destroyed Alabama on the ground. I was impressed with Mike Norvell's team in the season opener. I do think I have to see more. I'm interested to see how they're going to play against Miami here in a couple weeks. But they passed that first test, and I think it's a clear indication that they're going to be much, much better than they were last season, right? But again, week one, was this because Florida State was really good or because Bama is just not as good and you're kind of living off the hype of the name and the conference versus how good the team actually is? So Florida State, one of the clear winners of week one. And then the other, I think the top winner of the week was Miami. And look, I've been pretty critical of Miami, right? I've been pretty critical of Mario Cristobal. What I haven't been critical of is the overall talent on this team. And that talent was on full display. New defensive coordinator, and it showed. Now, of course, this is just week one. How much of this was Notre Dame not being able to get it done offensively? I think it's more so a testament to how well Miami played on defense. I mean, they just looked really, really good. Held Notre Dame to 24 points? Was it 27-24? Yeah, 27-24. Miami's offense didn't take many negative plays. I think that that's a testament to how good that offensive line is. The rushing attack was really, really good. Because you have to include sack yards as well, but I think Mark Fletcher did his job. Shamar Brown did his job. When you look at the box score, it's not going to show you 3 yards per carry, but I thought that Miami's offense did what they needed to do. Carson Beck, 20 of 31, 205 yards and 2 touchdowns. Both of those touchdowns, no disrespect to Carson, he made some pretty solid throws. Both of those touchdowns, it was 5% quarterback, 95% receiver. CJ Daniels, the LSU transfer, made one of the best catches that I've seen in a very long time for that second touchdown. It was, I think, Malachi Tony came back on underthrown ball and made a great play on the football. True freshman. Miami has a really good team. And I think that, of course, I wanted to be in wait and see approach before I crowned them a really good team and a national championship contender. But I left week one feeling much better about Miami's chances than I did Clemson. Now, granted, it's only week one, but Miami, not an easy start to the season with, now South Florida and Florida State, Louisville in like a 4-week stretch. But you got to feel good about week one in the Carson Beck era for Mario Cristobal's teams. I thought that they played really well. Florida State, Miami, the largest winners, the largest losers. Syracuse, I'm going to say Clemson and also Stanford. So I hope that this is going to be a weekly segment to where we talk about what happened in the ACC the week prior. But overall, really good week, 12-4 for the Atlantic Coast Conference, one that people wanted to completely crap on all offseason long. Nice to see the ACC holding their weight for the most part. But that is going to wrap up this Tuesday edition of the show. Everyone have a great day. We'll see you right back here tomorrow. Go Cards.